Hi guys, welcome to my channel Lisa Proactive Mom. Today we're jumping on the call with one-of-a-kind pediatric speech pathologist with 15 years of hands-on experience, who is also an owner of Kids Therapy Outlets, Bilingual Multidisciplinary Therapy Center in Florida. This amazing specialist is TATSIANA OSKO. She helps so many kids, including my son, to say their first words and learn how to communicate efficiently. I want to ask her all about premature baby speech development, what easy techniques and toys parents can use in daily routine, what to expect when you have a baby in a bilingual family, and how a delay in speech affects behavior in general. Hi Tatiana.
Hi.
Thank you for joining me today. You are almost the only one speech therapist out of many therapists who worked with my son back in time, who actually believed in him, in his abilities and potential. You helped not only him, but our whole family to find hope and joy, and our family dynamics just improved tremendously since you started working with him. You gave me so many valuable tips on how to work at home with Michael for faster results and how to look at a child as a whole. I'm so excited to have you here and ask all the questions I have in mind and share this knowledge with other parents. So let's start with the main topic of my channel, development of premature babies. Are those kids at increased risk for speech and language delays? If yes, when do you recommend to start early intervention and speech therapy? To wait and see for the delays or to start as early as possible?
I'm just going to introduce myself for a minute. I'm TATSIANA OSKO. I'm a bilingual speech language pathologist. I do therapy in English and Russian. So I was fortunate to work with Michael about 2 or 3 years ago. He was a wonderful child. So going back to the questions regarding developmental delay in children who are premature, let me just put it in like that. We have so many kids nowadays that already have language and speech delays that are not only premature, but due to different variables, different reasons, we see an increase in children who are language and speech delay. And language development, it's a very, very complex process. So for a child who was born premature, we can have a higher chance that that child will have a language delay. Research shows that a lot of children that are born before 37 weeks age, or 37 weeks old, they are in a higher risk to have language delay by 18 months of age. And as the child gets older, by 3 years and by 5 years, if parents are working with a team of therapists, a speech therapist, any other therapist, those chances of continue having language and speech delay are decreasing if proper intervention is done.
So, and for like micro preemies, like my son, 25 weeks, it's better to start early, it's like 1 year old or 2 years old, or it's just wait for the extreme delay?
Well, Michael was born at 25 weeks old. It's a I'm telling you, Elizabeth, he's a miracle child.
Correct.
And you are the most amazing parents that I ever met, because wherever you did for Michael, you did impossible, because the kids that are born 25 weeks old, they are in having a high chance of having different kind of delays, not only speech and language, fine motor, respiratory delays, heart failure, a lot of different areas that need to be addressed. And as a speech therapist, we also would work on his feeding problems, because obviously if a baby was premature, he might be on PEG, he might be on respirator. So his feeding skills, his oral motors are so weak. That's why it's important to start working with the speech therapist, not waiting until the child is 9 months or 12 months. You got to assess his feeding mechanism. You got to assess how strong his muscles are, because obviously if he was in a NICU for so long child, obviously he probably skipped the important milestones of being breastfed or being bottle fed, because of I'm not sure how Michael was fed, in fact. when he was in NICU?
Both breastfeeding and bottles. In the beginning, of course, it was tubes.
Yeah, so he had tubes at the beginning.
Tubes, but then it quickly became breastfeeding and bottle feeding.
Yes, so you see, so the first like developmental milestones, like to be able to use the bottle or use the breast, he missed it, but thank God you were on top of it and you started addressing that issue. So yeah, so you start as early as possible. You don't even wait till 12 months old. You monitor and monitor. If you see it, you do it right away.
So first is better speech therapists who specialize in both in feeding and like early speech therapy, like sounds.
Yes, early, because you want to see a child doing googling and cooing as early as 3 months and babbling at 6 months. If you see that he's not doing those basic steps, this is something for you. It doesn't mean he's going to be delayed, but that's already a red flag for you, just to, you better monitor it.
My son was babbling and saying mama, mama, mama until 3 years old, but no any words. But yes, you help him
as early as possible, because that's the thing.
I remember.
Early intervention is the key to success. The earlier you start, the baby is born, the brain has neuroplasticity. I always tell to my parents, brain is a sponge. The more water that you wash dishes, the more water you're gonna put into the sponge, the better when the sponge is filled with water, it's gonna pop out and burst and give you all of the results. You may not see them right away, but you will see them.
Go fast. Okay, where is the lizard? Where? Where is the frog? Where is the mouse? Where is the rooster? Very good. Where is the pig?
In the mud.
Where is the bird?
In the
Good. Where is the cat?
in basket.
Where is the duck?
In water.
Very good. Bravo.
My next question. What can parents do at home to lower the risk of language delay in preemies, to support this early speech development? And what toys do you recommend to have at home to encourage speech development, to encourage sounds, words, and sentences? So toys for different age groups. I know it's a lot, but that's the important question, because parents buy a lot, like lists of toys from Amazon. I want this, but what kind of toys actually work towards success?
Okay, let me start with the toys that will not work. Because right now, different manufacturers come up with the different complicated toys. We have access to internet, we have access to iPhone, iPad, and a lot of parents trying to catch up with to be on the same page with the technology. So parents buy, as early as 6 months, they buy the most complicated apps for their children, and while mommy is cooking in the kitchen, they just gonna put an app that's gonna teach kid letters and numbers. Yes, at 6 months, as early as 6 months. And they do not let a child to have a chance to be able to play with the simple cause-effect toys, to be able to track objects, like, not on the phone, but actual physical movement of the object, so they can use all of their senses to absorb that information. Because a lot of times, like, I see parents that are just putting a kid in a bassinet, that it's good to keep a child there for 30 minutes, and they just drop a lot of toys in the bassinet, and instead of just choosing one toy that, let's say, like even two blocks to put on top of each other, and they just put zillions of toys and just, okay, let my baby explore everything. No, when you choose the toy, you got to choose the simplest toy as is. It can be just a car. I mean, again, depending what age we're talking. If we're talking a child who's 12 months old, just get a truck and a rattle, and let's make the child to shake the rattle first, then put the rattle on the truck so the child can learn how to use two objects. Or when you're feeding your child, like, you don't even have to have a toy. Actually, you use a spoon and a plate. So you're gonna feed, let's say you're gonna feed Mikey, and Mikey's gonna get that spoon. That spoon is already a toy for a child, and let the Mikey he doesn't know how to hold the spoon correctly, but he's gonna have to pretend, somehow get that spoon and just put it in your mouth with the cereal that you're giving him. So the simpler the activities, the better the result's gonna be, because at this age, no, it doesn't matter what toys you're using. It's matter how you're playing with that toy with the child. You don't The child is going to be looking at your facial expression. The child's going to be looking at your vocalizations, at your mouth, how you're making that sound, like, oh, open your mouth. The airplane, you can take an airplane, and while you're feeding a child, like, you see airplane is flying, and so you're making different sounds. So as simple as is.
Mm-hmm. And for all the kids, like 3 years old,
We want to see a lot of cause and effect toys. We want to see a lot of messy plays, because through messy plays, a lot of language development are occurring, a lot of speech development are occurring, a lot of fine motor skills are occurring, because speech and language development is a motor act, and it has to do a lot with fine motor movement and gross motor movement. So it's a lot of involvement on the side of the parents. I would always say, what? When I see families, when I used to do a lot of home visits, I go to their living rooms and I see thousand of toys that are laying there. Nobody's using them. I'm like, and the parents go, oh, my child is not even interested in those toys. Obviously, because you have to remove all the trash out of your living room. Just choose like something for like zoo, like animals. Get Play-Doh and get animals. Okay, you're gonna sit down with the child. Obviously, a lot of kids have difficult time to playing by themselves. That's why it's so important to have parents involved, or babysitter, or other sibling. And you're gonna do pretend zoo game. Okay, today is Sunday, let's go to the zoo. And you're just gonna take a cow, you're just gonna take a plate, or you're gonna pretend to make some food for the cow, or you're gonna take green Play-Doh, you're gonna make grass out of green Play-Doh, and the child's gonna learn how to feed the cow, or you take a horse, you take a fence, the horse is gonna be jumping over the fence. So again, very simple toys, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars.
You're talking about pretend play, right? The pretend
Yeah,
play. Oh, mm-hmm. And
pretend play. Like, I used to do a lot with Michael sensory bins,
mm-hmm.
because through that you can do fine motor, you can work on the behavior, you can do calming activities, and language. It's like you can shoot for the moon and stars with any sensory bin. This is the best toy for language development. And unfortunately, a lot of parents don't like to use them at home, because when you use sensory bins, it's a lot of mess. It's a lot of mess. It goes along with when the parents are teaching it, even premature child, how to eat correctly. A lot of parents, oh, it's gonna take, because the muscles are so weak for some premature babies. Like, oh, it's gonna take for my child to eat for 2 hours, and the entire living room, the entire kitchen area is going to be messy. So we don't want this to happen. Like, I'm just gonna feed the child fast, fast, fast. But again, the child is playing with the food. He's exploring. Oh, this is strawberry. Oh, mom is gonna put strawberry in her mouth. Let the child take the strawberry in his hand, because he's gonna know you said strawberry, because we see a lot of premature baby who has receptive language delays. And so if the child's gonna experience that strawberry 1,000 times, strawberry here, strawberry on my cheek, strawberries all over the place, all over the kitchen table. I know it's a lot of cleaning, but this strawberry is gonna go into that sponge that is in the head.
Yes. Can you explain, if we already talk about sensory beans and those food connections, can you explain how how sensory things and like gross motor and fine motor skills relates to speech, like how all this related?
The more input they get from eyes, from nose, from touching, the more their system is ready to receive the information. The more inputs are getting into the brain, and it gives the baby a chance to get that signal more stronger.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's
And
interesting.
obviously motor and gross, fine motor and gross motor, because speech is a fine motor act. So it's very important. Like when I do my evaluation for premature babies and regular babies, I want to see if a child can do a lot of motor activities like jumping, skipping, hopping, because I found out that a lot of prematures baby, they're at a risk for motor development. That's why they have to go to more physical therapy and occupational therapy, because a child is 2.5, he does not know how to jump. So that's a gross motor action that is not there. And imagine the brain send the signal to your legs, and it's like very strong signal, and your feet are not jumping. And imagine the brain is sending signal to your tongue. It's such a tiny fine motor act. So if the big signal is not being read by your brain, how can a tiny piece of signal be read by your brain? So first you have to start training like gross motor, fine motor, and everything. It's like a pieces of puzzle will be put together.
Wow.
So when I do my therapy with the kids, I go crazy. Thank God I'm lucky, because I work with a team of one in my center in Kids Therapy Outlet. I have occupational therapists, I have developmental therapists that are working with me for the past 15 years, hand in hand. So I'm stealing their ideas. So I try to use a lot of those activities that they are using into my speech and language therapy sessions.
Thank you for explaining this connection. My next question is about bilinguals. How bilingualism impacts language development, and what to do if a preemie with severe speech delay lives at home where two parents talk multiple languages. Like in my family, we talk Russian, Hebrew, and English, and we focus just on English, but not all the parents will focus and make efforts to just focus on one language and talk one language. What to do?
Wow, it's a very, very interesting, very sick, and very tricky questions, because we live in Florida, and Florida is a state that we have different nationalities here. We have everybody who have an accent. I have an accent too. We all have accents here. So yes, and we see I see a lot of children that are premature, that are not premature, that are being in the household like Michael, where there are 2 or 3 languages being spoken. The truth is, if a child is developing, if the child's brain is developing fine and his language is going to be developing fine, having 3 or 2 languages should not affect the regular language development. There are children that are born, they're already at risk for language development. So it's a very tricky question. There are numerous research, like in fact, for my master's degree is in bilingual language development, and looking through thousands of research papers, there is no clear answer. Do 2 languages or 3 languages affect the brain, affect the language development? Does it hinder language development? But from my experience, I can tell you this. The simpler language, the simpler vocabulary you're using with the child, it's going to give a child a better start to develop one kind of a language. Because imagine we have a child whose receptive language skills, understanding of the language is so low. Then you have mom speaking Hebrew, you have dad speaking Spanish, and you don't speak Spanish, your husband doesn't speak Hebrew, and between yourself you speak English, and then you go to a daycare where they speak, let's say, Russian or French. So this poor child, this poor brain that is already like, okay, I'm not sure what's going on now, and he hears 4 different languages, it might put an extra burden on that poor baby's brain development. So obviously, we cannot change the circumstances. We cannot change the environment that we live. I'm always telling parents, it's a very private situation for each family. It's a family situation. You have to see what works for you. If you, like in your case, you knew English is going to be the main language that you guys going to speak, and it's going to make Michael life a little bit easier, because you know that 3 languages he cannot catch up right now, because your goal was for him to be able just to express himself, to get this frustration out. And obviously English is a very easy language to learn for kids, because the first words that are being used in English vocabulary by babies, they're very, very simple. and a lot of babies, they prefer to start speaking English. So I would say, if that's something that you choose is going to work for your family, go for it. Because I have some families that have very strong opinion. No matter, like, baby can be born premature, and like, you know what? No, I'm going to speak only Hebrew to my baby, or only French to my baby, because my English is broken. I don't speak perfect English, and if I'm using broken English, that connection, that mommy and baby connection, is being lost, because mom is thinking into her head, "Oh my God, how should I say that word in English so that pure mother and child connections is not there?" That's why a lot of families, they're choosing to go that way. Some families are choosing to go the way that you went to. It's a very, like, situation that's particular to every individual family. You have to follow your heart, and you have to, because eventually everybody's gonna speak. Somebody's gonna speak slower, somebody's gonna start sooner. If that approach is working for you, you choose that approach.
Okay, I understand. And if family,
I didn't give you the specific answer, though.
I know, that's great.
Because there is no specific answer.
If family wants to find a speech therapist for a child, and so it's better to go with for example, with their language they speak at home, or with the language child speaks at school.
So what I would usually do, I would obviously usually do the evaluation first and see what language, how strong the receptive skills for this child is. If he's coming to me and I'm testing him, let's say in English and Spanish, and I'm seeing that his comprehension in English is now 0, I would probably start with his native language, like in doing therapy. And once I see a child is getting more comfortable, he can express himself somehow to reduce the frustration of not being able to speak, because not being able to speak, a lot of kids have negative behavior as a consequences of not being able to express himself. So I would probably start therapy from the language that the child is more comfortable with, not speaking, because we're talking a child who is nonverbal, but understanding. And then gradually we can introduce the second language. We can just start adding words that are being used in a daycare and smoothly move to the daycare setting language.
Now, also one of my favorite topics, behavior.
Ooh.
Does speech delay really affect behavior? How do you handle challenging behavior, and how do you keep a child engaged during the session? How do you handle this kind of, screaming and undesirable behavior during the session?
Sometimes you ignore, because in order for behavior to get better, it has to get worse. It depends, again, it depends on each child. Each child is individual. So when you already have a child, when you do the initial evaluation, that's why, again, doing the evaluation and we bring a child for therapy, it's so important, because you get so much information regarding the child. So you already know how to structure the therapy session. You know that some child's behavior, he's very active, because some kids with premature, they may have higher risk of having ADHD. So they're not going to sit and play with the toy for 5 minutes. So you want to be prepared to have different toys that are being hidden, and you play for 2 minutes, you did successful activity, you move to another activity with the child. Again, you may need, if the child coming who has a lot of sensory seeking behavior, sensory avoidance behavior. So you want to try to prepare all of the materials that are going to be targeted exactly to that particular child. Or you give a child sensory break, or if you know a child who's been premature and has ADHD or something, so you may plan your activity not sitting at the table. You may want to go to the little gym that you have, like in the office where you're working, a little trampoline, or a little, bouncy ball swing, and you can do the activity putting a child in a bouncy ball, or putting a child in a sensory swing. You can just, I remember I did that with Michael. I put him sometimes on a sensory swing. I'm like, okay, we're gonna say, swing me more, swing me less. Mikey, where are you sitting?
In the bed.
Can you crawl in the center of the swing?
Yes.
Crawl. Say, I am crawling
I am going
like a baby.
Oh, you're already in front of the swing. Are you in the front? Oh, you moved. Say, I'm back again.
And I think my last question to you is kind of complicated one.
Oh,
When you look at the child as a whole, again, maybe during evaluation or first couple of visits, and in knowing the fact that a child was born prematurely, you know this fact. Would you recommend any other therapies, activities, checkups with medical professional or something else to fully understand the underlying reason and support speech development in addition to speech therapy? Because sometimes, like in my case with Michael, we had speech therapy since he was 2 and no progress at all, like during 1.5 years, no progress at all. And then you gave me advice to go to reflex integration therapy and few tips how to handle at home, what to read, how to read, like with some activities with the mouth. And then in complex, everything together, it worked.
Yeah,
So
that's what I.
anything like to recommend parents that just lost, they just don't know what to do besides speech therapy, which direction to look?
You know what? It's a complicated question for you, but it's a very simple question for me. I'll tell you why. When I started my career as a speech therapist, I worked on my own. Just I'm like, I had my baby. I'm like, let me just have 2 or 3 kids that I'm going to be working on. And then, like, within 6 months, I already had a full caseload. So I'm doing these evaluations, and I see that as a speech therapist, for me, sometimes by myself, I cannot handle that child because this child is such a mess. He is a sensory mess. He's a fine motor, gross motor mess. His auditory is not working. Like, maybe hearing is not there. So I'm like, you know what? I cannot do that on my own, but I know I can help this child if I have all the possible resources. That's how kids therapy outlet happened. I'm like, I need help with sensory. This is going to be OT. I need help with physical activity. That's going to be physical therapist. I need help with the developmental therapy. That's going to be developmental therapist, because I figured it out like on my own. I'm amazing, but if I have a team who is going to help me, because again, I know a lot about occupational therapy, but I'm not an occupational therapist. I know a lot about behavioral therapy because we have different kind of kids. So we take courses on behavioral therapy. But again, I'm not a behavioral therapist. I can learn from them, but I don't know exactly what's still happening. So yeah, I always tell to the parents, you have to go anywhere you can go. All kind of therapy. This is not an injection. This is not pills. This is nothing that chemically involved. Everything that you can put into this developing sponge right now, that's hooray. You gotta do every single resources available. Try it. It doesn't mean it's gonna do miracle on its own, but if you're gonna put one puzzle, another puzzle, third puzzle, you're gonna have a nice picture. And some parents are looking at me like, wow, well, no, but we heard you're good. I'm like, yes, I'm good, but I'm good because I have people who are also, I'm learning from them and they're helping me, I'm helping them. Like reflex integration. I took myself 4 courses of reflex integration because I know some kids that are coming, their reflex is not that well developed. So I'm like, I'm not going to be a reflex integration specialist, but I want to know what it is about so I can advise parents what they need to be seeking for.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. Thank you.
Oh, it was a pleasure. I can talk for another 5 hours.
Yes, I have feeling that you can talk and explain. Thank you very much. Tell me, please, if any parents want to connect with you, to contact you for a consultation, do you provide telehealth or phone consultation?
Yes.
If they out of state, how to contact you?
You can give them my contact, my email, my Instagram. We have we have an account on Facebook. We have an account. We have a actual physical website that is being renovated right now to get it more sophisticated, to be on the same level with the demands of the population now. Yes, so there are different ways to contact us, and by phone, and we do Zoom consultation.
Thank you, Tatiana, again. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and thank you very much for this amazing interview.
And I miss my Michael. I miss him a lot.
We miss you too. We miss you too.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.